What's up, everyone? Jimmy Turner here. Welcome to the Money Meets Medicine channel. So when I was a fourth-year medical student, my life was forever changed because I didn't understand personal finance. I actually made a catastrophic mistake that to this day puts my family at financial risk. And I don't want you to make that same mistake. Unfortunately, what I'm about to teach you is not something that the financial industry really wants you to know. Why? Because they often can't make money from it. And this might explain why for every $1 the financial services industry spends on financial education, they spend $27 on marketing products. But here on Money Meets Medicine, we believe that every doctor deserves to practice medicine because you want to and not because you have to due to financial constraints. That's why the Money Meets Medicine channel exists on YouTube to teach you the personal finance topics that you wish you had learned in medical school and that the financial industry is often unwilling to teach you. So before we get to the most important financial task that we're going to talk about in this video, I want to mention some other resources you can find from Money Meets Medicine that may be helpful in your journey toward financial independence. So first, you can download a free copy of my best-selling book, The Physician Philosopher's Guide to Personal Finance, the 20% of personal finance doctors need to know to get 80% of the results. In the second edition of this book, I'll walk you through all of the essential aspects that you need to build your financial foundation, including investing, asset protection, and it even includes 3 brand new chapters on student loans from a certified student loan professional. All you have to do to snag your free copy is go to moneymeetsmedicine.com, and you'll see the book on the front page there. And on this channel, I'll also be hosting regular live classes most weeks. You can even join us to ask live questions. There'll be live free classes. And if you're a longtime podcast listener of the Money Meets Medicine podcast, I plan on dropping podcast episodes on this channel too, potentially as early releases exclusive to this YouTube channel. So make sure to subscribe to the channel and to turn on notifications so that you see when the new content drops. After all of that, if you still want to take a deeper dive into personal finance, head over to moneymeetsmedicine.com where you can access the Medical Degree Financial University course. In fact, the most important task we're about to dive into, the one that led to a massive financial catastrophic mistake for me, is one of the 9 steps in the roadmap that I teach in the Medical Degree Financial University course, otherwise known affectionately as MDFU. So, all right, if you're ready for it, let's talk about the most important financial task for doctors, the one that I screwed up. So when my wife, Kristen, and I, we had our first kid, we decided to be, responsible adults. We wanted to get the life insurance that we needed in case something happened to either or both of us. The problem was that I knew absolutely nothing about money at the time. Personal finance was this foreign topic, so I didn't know who to trust. And that's when a classmate of mine, well-meaning, from medical school, introduced me to his brother. And surely, being the brother of a medical school classmate, this is someone I can trust, right? Turns out that the answer was no. At the time, I was a fourth-year medical student. I had no income, so I really had no reason to need disability insurance. I also had an essential tremor and a remote ADHD diagnosis, and so when the agent put me through a fully underwritten insurance process, I ended up getting denied. I thought it probably wasn't that big a deal, but I honestly couldn't have been more wrong. To this day, I cannot get disability insurance because of that mistake, and that could be potentially catastrophic financially for my family. In fact, it would be. So the policy he made me apply for included my entire medical history. And we're going to talk about this in this video as I walk you through the step-by-step process of getting your assets protected. But had I waited until residency, I would have had what was called a guaranteed standard issue policy available to me, one that would have provided the right type of coverage but would not have looked into my medical history. It's literally guaranteed so long as you haven't been disabled and you haven't been denied, regardless of your medical history. So since I got denied when my classmate's brother had me apply despite my medical history, to this day, I can't get disability insurance because the GSI policy, that guaranteed policy, remember one of the stipulations is you can't have been denied before. I got denied, so now I can't get it. And this is potentially, like I mentioned, catastrophic. Why? Because I can teach you everything you want to know about personal finance from investing to paying off student loans, and I plan to do that on the Money Meets Medicine channel. But if you lose your income, none of that matters. There is no money to invest or to pay down debt. And this is why 80% of doctors have disability insurance, and the other 20% are hopefully financially independent and no longer need it. At that point, you can drop it, right? So let's discuss what all these terms mean and the exact process that you need to make sure you don't screw this up yourself. The one that, honestly, the financial industry doesn't want you to know. All right, let's dive in. So when it comes to disability insurance, there are a few key takeaways. But before we can really go through the process, the step-by-step process that I'll show you in just a minute of how to get disability insurance, we need to define some terms. And honestly, the definition of disability insurance probably matters the most. So what do I mean by this? Well, some disability insurance products will protect you, they say, but they protect you based on the definition of disability. So if that definition isn't strong enough, that means that it won't actually protect you should you get disabled and, let's say, continue to practice in a different field or continue in a different profession. You don't want that. You want the strongest definition possible so that if you can't do the very aspects that you do every day as a physician, you will be protected and you will receive a benefit. So the definition of disability insurance matters most. This is what's called an own occupation definition of disability insurance. It is specialty specific, it is own occupation, and the wording that needs to be in the contract is that you are unable to perform the material and substantial duties of your occupation. That means that if you were practicing, let's say, anesthesia, I'm an anesthesiologist, I was practicing anesthesia the day before, and now I lose my arm in an accident, I would get paid if I can't any longer do the exact things that I was doing previously in my job before I got disabled. So that means that if I can't practice anesthesia, right, I can't intubate people with one arm, I would get paid my benefit. Now, they couldn't just stick me into the preoperative anesthesia clinic and say, hey, can't you evaluate patients preoperatively for their anesthesia risk and just do clinic? Well, if my definition wasn't good, they could do that. If it wasn't an own occupation definition, they could ask me to do that and say, hey, you can make money that way, right? Well, in an own occupation definition, if I'm disabled from the things that I was actually doing to make the money to do my job, like intubating people for general anesthetics, I would get paid. Okay, so this definition is fundamentally important. And it turns out there are only 5 companies as of the production of this video that really provide that own occupation definition, that have a long-standing history of providing good products in this space. And they're listed here on this slide. Now, something I need to tell you is that the way that insurance is sold in our country, you have to use an insurance agent to purchase disability insurance. And so no matter where you get it from, somebody is going to make a commission from that product. However, they should be able to offer you quotes from all 5 of these companies so that you can choose the best product at the best price for you. But all 5 of these companies at the time of recording this video have an own occupation, specialty-specific disability definition that will actually be the kind that protects you as a physician practicing medicine. If you see that your company that you have a disability policy isn't on this slide, you might want to shoot me an email at jimmy@moneymeetsmedicine.com. I'm happy to discuss what we can do and point you in the right direction for that help if you should need it. All right, so some terms to define before we can talk through the process of exactly how to go about getting disability insurance so that you don't make that catastrophic mistake that I made. There's 2 big branches in terms of types of disability insurance. One is called, group policy. You can also think of this as an association policy. This is the sort of thing that's offered by your hospital or maybe your private practice group or potentially the ones you see from the American Medical Association or from the American College of Surgeons, other medical societies. These group policies are something that you need to understand because they're put in front of you so often, and your employer probably provides one, that you really need to understand what it is. The other kind is called an individual policy. This is a kind that you purchase outside of your employer, that you don't purchase from a large medical society. It is individually written for you. So it's called an individual policy. All right. So group policies, individual policies, 2 different types. Very important to understand the difference between those 2 things. The group policy, what's so important about that? Well, you don't own it. So if the American Medical Association or your hospital that employs you decides to get rid of that disability insurance product, you thought you were previously protected, but now that disability insurance is gone. You don't control it. It's gone, right? And this is because you don't own it. They do. The disability definition is also not very good. In some of these products, they've gotten better, I'll be honest, but they're still not true own occupation definitions. They use language to make it sound like it is, but truth be told, they aren't really that protective. And you'll notice that a lot of these insurance products that are sold by these large medical societies actually come from one of the companies that weren't the 5 listed on the previous slide. There is reason for that. The disability definition is different. These policies can also be canceled. So whereas an individual policy, I'll tell you about in a second, you can just keep that and it's non-cancelable. A good type of disability insurance that's individual is non-cancelable, meaning that they can't get rid of it. They can't change the rates. They are all the same. Outside income also is another big deal. So these are the 4 things that separate a group policy from an individual policy. So for example, right, I have a business as an entrepreneur outside of medicine, and the group policy provided by my employer would say, hey, we were going to pay you let's say $100,000. But since you make $20,000 outside of your job in medicine, you got disabled, we're actually only going to pay you $80,000 because you make 20 outside of this hospital, right? So that's what a group policy does. An individual policy is entirely different and much better. And this is the reason that you need it. You own it. It's portable. And that's the word for that. It comes with you. So if you leave your employer, you go to a different practice, they don't have insurance, guess what? You still have disability insurance because you have an individual policy that you own. They can't get rid of it. They can't cancel it. Why? Because you own it. The disability definition is also, if you get it from one of the 5 companies I mentioned previously, own occupation. It is good. If you're a surgeon, they can't just make you go work in clinic. They can't make you go and, practice a different kind of medicine that doesn't actually bring in the money that you were making. Instead, it protects you from the exact kind of practice that you were practicing before you got disabled. Outside income, let's say you invest in real estate. A lot of physicians nowadays do, or you have outside income from a different source, then guess what? It doesn't count against it. If your policy says it's going to pay you $7,500 a month through an individual policy, and you make another $5,000 a month from real estate or some other endeavor outside of medicine, guess what? You make your $7,500 and your $5,000, and they don't reduce your benefit, unlike a group policy. Okay, so this is why it is important to have an individual disability insurance policy. If your group policy doesn't have an own occupation definition, you don't own it, it is cancelable, and potentially it counts outside income from you should you make it outside of medicine. So this is a group versus an individual policy. So let's break down the individual policies because there's 2 kinds, and this is the part that I didn't understand where I made a catastrophic financial mistake for my family. The first is called the Guaranteed Standard Issue Policy. I've mentioned this already in this video, but this GSI policy, which is sometimes what it goes by, is guaranteed so long as you haven't been disabled and you haven't been denied. It doesn't look into your medical history. This is different than a fully underwritten policy where they take down all of your medical history, all of the questions, all of the medications that you've been on. If you've seen a doctor in the last 5 to 10 years, they take down all that information. They submit it to an insurance company, and the insurance company says, well, do we want to insure this person? Are they an acceptable risk for us to insure? And they may say yes, and they may say no. If they say no, then that's what happened to me. And you may not be able to get the Guaranteed Standard Issue Policy that you have available to you if you're in training. This is a really, really bad mistake. Okay, and so we're going to talk about how to prevent this mistake momentarily, but it's important to understand the difference between the GSI policy and a fully underwritten policy. So, a little more on that GSI. It requires no physical exam and very limited medical history. So basically, they ask if you've been disabled or lost the ability to take care of yourself as part of that application process. The GSIs still come from those big 5 companies and therefore are still own occupation. So you don't have to worry about that it is still an individual policy. It is just a specific kind that doesn't look into your medical history. The drawbacks are that it can cost you a little bit more and it's only available during training. So if you are in training, this is really, really important for you. And if you're out of training, please share this with trainees that you know, because this is a really, really big mistake that I've seen doctors make. In fact, I've seen doctors who get out of training, have apparently a prior cancer diagnosis, or maybe they have multiple sclerosis or type 1 diabetes, and they reach out and they're like, hey, Jimmy, I'm looking to get disability insurance. I just finished training a year ago. What should I do? And I say, well, unfortunately at this point, given your medical problems, you're pretty much uninsurable. And so, you can't really get it. You should have gotten a Guaranteed Standard Issue Policy when you were in training. This only exists during training and for the 3 to 6 months after you finish. Not every hospital has it, but the vast majority do. If you're not sure whether your hospital has one or not, shoot me an email at jimmy@moneymeetsmedicine.com. Shoot me an email at jimmy@moneymeetsmedicine.com. I'm happy to figure out what GSI program exists where you are, if there is one, and to connect you to the right resources to help you do that. It also can cost potentially a little bit more depending on the GSI plan. So only available during training. The monthly cost is a little bit higher because these are baked in plans that don't change from person to person, unlike a fully underwritten plan, okay? But it's guaranteed. A fully underwritten plan, however, is now customizable. You can add bells and whistles if there are certain things that you're interested in. It provides potentially a higher maximum benefit, meaning that you can get paid more each month should you become disabled. This is really important. Say, for example, if you're a neurosurgeon, you make lots of money. A GSI policy probably doesn't provide enough of a benefit to protect you to the extent that you'll need to make up for your monthly income that you'll be missing. And it is often less expensive because you've gone through that underwriting process. They've said, hey, we're willing to take this risk on you because you're not too high of a risk that it will cost us a bunch of money. Because remember, insurance companies are businesses. They do have to remain profitable. The drawbacks. Biggest one is the one that I've been harping on. A full past medical history is going to be taken from you. The medications you're on. Do you smoke? Have you had any medical problems or seen a doctor in the last 5 to 10 years? And this is fundamentally important because so many people try to go through this process and they're like, they won't figure out that I've got, that one MRI I had 7 years ago for that one thing that didn't turn out to be a big deal. They won't find out that I had, test taking anxiety and I ended up on some propranolol, or maybe I took Vyvanse or Adderall during my medical school days to study. They will find out. And so it is fundamentally important to disclose all of your medical problems to the insurance agent that's helping you when you obtain disability insurance. It is a full past medical history. So if you have something, you have to disclose it. Otherwise, they'll find it out and you can get denied. I don't want that happening to you. Super important. It does also involve a little bit longer of an application process to get all that information and to submit it, get it reviewed, and get it applied. Okay? So how do we do this? How do we go about this process now that we understand these GSI terms versus fully underwritten, recognizing that a group policy is not sufficient for the vast majority of physicians, and you need individual disability insurance? How do you do it? Well, let's walk through that step by step. First question to answer is, do you have disability insurance? If the answer is no, the next question is, are you in training or have you finished training in the last 6 months? If so, there's a decent chance that you have a guaranteed standard issue policy available for you through the institution where you trained. Okay, if you have a GSI available, there's a good chance you probably just need to obtain a GSI policy. Now, I'll tell you right now, and I'll repeat this again in a minute, if you have no medical history, you haven't seen a doctor in the last 5 to 10 years, you don't take any medications at all, then a GSI policy is probably not necessary. But if there's any question, if there's any risk, and the insurance agent that you're working with directs you to this, I would highly recommend you consider it if you're concerned at all. Okay, so you obtain a GSI policy because it's available to you, you haven't been disabled, you haven't been denied before because you're going through this process for the first time, I hope. You get a GSI policy. Once you get that, you can then consider getting a fully underwritten policy from, one of the other 5 carriers. And in fact, at some institutions, the fully underwritten policy is something you can apply for. And even if you get denied, you can still get a GSI. But there's only one company at the time of making this video that does that. And if you do it the wrong way, you can have what happened to me happen to you. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. If you have any concerns at all about your medical history or seeing a doctor in the last 5 to 10 years, a GSI policy is something that you should consider. All right, but let's say that you don't have a GSI available to you. You're an attending physician. You've been out for a year and a half. You recognize that you now need disability insurance. Well, you need to go get a fully underwritten policy. This is the only kind that's available to you. Nothing wrong with that. There is a chance you might get, an elimination or an exclusion or, get denied. That said, that's the policy that is now available to you. You can't go backwards. If you get denied disability insurance because you applied fully underwritten like I did, you can no longer get a GSI the vast majority of the time. So you can't do it the other way around. If you remember one thing from this video, let's make it 2. Own occupation, and you have to apply for a GSI if you have medical concerns, because if you get denied, you often can't get the GSI and will have no insurance like me. Okay? After that, you want to see, okay, well, is it fully underwritten by one of the big 5s if you do have disability insurance? And if the answer is yes, you do have it written by one of those 5 I showed you earlier, you need to go through this checklist. Now, in this video, I'm probably not going to dive into the specifics of these riders, but you can look them up on your own or follow along in the live lecture series on this YouTube channel. We'll be discussing asset protection more in depth. I'll go through all of these riders here. But these are some riders that you might want to consider purchasing, in particular the benefit purchase rider or the future purchase rider or the benefit increase option. Goes by several different names in order to increase your coverage once you're out of training if you buy it when you're in training. Again, we'll talk about these riders in another video. For now, what you need to know is you need to add your group policy benefit. Let's say they pay you $5,000 a month for your group policy and your individual policy. Let's say you get another $5,000 there. Your take-home pay is $10,000 a month. If those two things add up and they cover your take-home pay, congrats, your assets are protected. If not, you need to buy more insurance. The entire point of disability insurance is so that if you get disabled, your lifestyle will not have to change, right? So your group policy plus your individual policy need to add up to equal your take-home pay. And if you do that, your assets are then protected. So as we recap this video, you need to make sure you get true own occupation disability insurance. If you have any past medical history at all, please, please, please pursue a GSI plan. Make sure you do this while you're in training, because the guaranteed standard issue plan goes away after 3 to 6 months following your completion of training. And if you have no medical history, it is completely reasonable to go through a fully underwritten policy. Save yourself the time, potentially some money, have potentially a better policy, but you need to make sure you disclose all of your medical problems when you get disability insurance. Now, you might be wondering, where do I go to get this stuff? How do I do this? Well, fortunately, we can help you with that at Money Meets Medicine. If you go to moneymeetsmedicine.com, we actually have the ability to get you quotes for disability insurance, should you have an interest, should you have the need. And knowing my story, you can imagine that our goal at Money Meets Medicine is to make sure that absolutely no doctors get denied. So long as you disclose all of your medical history, we have a zero tolerance policy on denials for insurance. And our job is to make sure that we help you get your number one task as a physician in order so that your finances are taken care of. So if you have any questions at all, you want to know if your policy is any good, you want someone to review it, or you want to get a quote for disability insurance policy, see which GSIs are available where you're training, any of that, just visit moneymeetsmedicine.com and we'll be happy to help you out and to take care of you and to answer any questions you might have. Don't hesitate to reach out. Jimmy at moneymeetsmedicine.com is my email. Should you have questions, comments, concerns, I'm here to help. And we will see you in the next video series that you check out on this YouTube channel.